بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. Dear and respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Imam Hussain Online Seminary. In this episode, we are going to explain some of the very important and useful technical terms in jurisprudence or fiqh terminology. The terms like Wajib, Haram, Mustahab, Makrooh and Mubaah, which are very much important in fiqh because they are used a lot in our Islamic jurisprudence. That's why when it comes to Deen like prayer, fasting, Hajj, homes, jihad, etc., we must know that what does, for example, Wajib mean, and what does Haram mean, what does Mustahab mean, what does Makrooh, and what does, for example, Mubaah mean. So that is why we first explain these technical terms in Islamic jurisprudence. Then inshallah we'll move on explaining all the Deen inshallah in the coming episodes. So to begin with these technical jurisprudential terms, we must begin with the very important and significant term which is wajib in our jurisprudence. Wajib means obligatory, something that we must do, and it is wajib, it is obligatory and mandatory to be done by Muslims. Some of the actions or deeds must be performed by Muslims is wajib things or obligatory things. Like for example, saying prayers 5 times a day, or for example fasting, or the other wajib actions in Islam that you inshallah will get familiar in the coming episodes with all those let's say wajib actions. The second term is mustahab, which means recommended. When it comes to the recommended actions, it is better to do them. Like what? Like visiting the sick person, like reciting the Holy Quran. So recitation of the Holy Quran or visiting the sick person is mustahab, is recommended. Now, there's an important question that may arise in our minds that, okay, then wajib action is also a kind of action that's better to do. And this kind of action is also a kind of action that is better to be done by Muslims, both of them. So then, what is the main difference between wajib and mustahab? This is a very important question. To answer this question, we must notice that if someone does or performs these wajib actions, he will be rewarded. Of course, if someone does mustahab actions, again he or she will be rewarded. So, now, what is the difference then? The difference is this, that if someone avoids doing these wajib actions, he or she will get punished on the Day of Judgment. So leaving and avoiding these actions will have punishment. But for mustahab actions, for recommended actions, if someone avoids doing these actions, he or she will never get any punishment. So both of them have rewards, but both of them have not punishment. Only leaving and avoiding wajib actions will have punishments, but leaving and avoiding these actions will never have any punishment. This is the main difference between mustahab and wajib actions in fiqh, in Islamic jurisprudence. The third term is mubaah. Mubaah means permissible, something that is allowed to do. So, mubaah actions are like walking, playing sports. Majority of our actions and our deeds in our lives are categorized under this category. I mean the permissible and mubaah actions. So, when it comes to the mubaah actions or allowed actions, we must understand that it is something like neutral, because we can do them and we can leave them. So you are allowed either to do or not to do. Both of them are allowed. So this kind of actions can be performed and cannot be performed or can be avoided. Both are correct and allowed, and there's no problem with that. Like walking, like playing sports. You can walk, you can play sport, and you cannot play sport. If you, for example, walk, there is no reward for that. If you avoid walking, then there is no punishment for that. But of course, if you do these mubah actions by this intention that I am doing these actions for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, I am playing sports, walking or exercising to stay in shape, to become healthier inshallah. To what? To support, to help some poor people, needy people, to help my parents, to help the needy, the poor, to work for the sake of Allah. Yeah? So by this intention, if you do even mubah actions, it becomes like recommended actions. It means that it will get rewards on the Day of Judgment. Even for these mubah actions, if we perform it by this intention that I'm doing them for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is mubah action. So mubah actions neither have punishments nor rewards. The fourth key jurisprudential term or fiqh terminology is makruh. Makruh means something which is disapproved, which is abominable, which is detestable. Something that is better not to do. Better not to do. So it is exactly the opposite of mustahab, the opposite of recommended actions. Like what? Like eating too much, sleeping too much. So these kind of actions are disapproved actions or kind of makruh actions. It means that if someone does this kind of actions, of course it will be considered as bad kind of actions. So that's why it's better not to perform these actions. But there is a big difference between makruh and haram, that after explaining haram things I will mention the difference between haram and makruh. Because you might say that okay, haram is also those kind of actions that should not be performed. These actions are not, they are also that kind of actions that should not be performed. So what is the difference between them? Let's explain first the term haram in Islamic jurisprudence. Then inshallah I will explain the difference between these two kind of categories of actions. The fifth one, or the fifth key term in Islamic jurisprudence, is haram. Haram means forbidden. It is those kind of things that must never be done. We should never do these kind of actions. Mubah is those kind of things that's better not to do. But haram is that kind of action that we should never do. So, like what? Like telling lies. A Muslim must never tell any lies. Or like eating pork. It is haram. It is prohibited to eat pork. We should never ever eat pork. So if you perform these haram and forbidden actions, it will absolutely have punishments, azab. It is exactly the opposite of wajib. If you avoid doing wajib, you will get punished. If you do haram things, you will get punished. So, now what is the difference between makruh and haram? It's clear. So if you do makruh things, there is no punishment for you. But if you do haram things, you will be absolutely punished on the Day of Judgment by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, doing these actions have punishments, but doing these actions have no punishments. But of course, it's better not to do these actions. It's better to avoid these kind of actions as well. So these are the key terms in Islamic jurisprudence: Wajib, Mustahab, Mubaah, Makrooh, Haram. So in the two extremes we have Wajib and Haram. It is opposite to this Wajib. Wajib is opposite to Haram. Mustahab is opposite to Makrooh. Makrooh is the opposite of Mustahab. Mubaah is, or permissible actions are between these two sides, because it doesn't have, because it has neither punishments nor rewards. So, alhamdulillah, we explained all the fiqh important terminology in this session. I hope that you will be able, inshallah, from now on to understand these technical terms in Islamic fiqh and jurisprudence, and you will be, inshallah, able to identify the examples or the instances of these kind of actions and deeds in our lives. Thank you very much. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Allahumma salli wa sallim wa zid wa barik ala rasulillah wa alihi al-athhar.